Today is not about Star Wars. It's not about Clone Wars. It's about pedal clones. And it really comes from last week's talk that I said a few things at the end. And the response to this was like really shockingly interesting in a good way. I got several emails that were really good discussions that I had with people. Basically, you should go watch last week. If you're just showing up and you've never seen the Monday monologues, the point of these is just that I sit down and talk about stuff. Generally, it's deeper history talks, things about how things are invented, how innovation works, stuff like that. And I talked about the MXR pedals where they have the Duke of Tone or the Timmy. And I talked about how my opinions on that for the industry and what does that really mean for the industry and what does it mean for the future of pedals. Then at the end, I showed a picture of a Prince of Tone clone, like a cheap Chinese clone. And then I just talked about what's up with that. And I touched on it really briefly, and I received just all kinds of interesting feedback. I think that the subject of cloning is a really tricky one. I think that everyone's scared to talk about it for various reasons. But I think at the end of the day, I'm okay to go through this subject in this kind of format because it is what it is. When it comes to guitar pedals, nobody's necessarily, reinventing the wheel. And I want to get into that. I think there are cases where there are incredibly unique things being made, but there are cases where people are simply copying and cloning circuits and designs and passing them off. And there's some type of struggle with what is the ethic of this? What's the ethic of it? What's the common permission? Like, is there a permission in the industry to do this? That kind of thing. So I want to jump through it. But before I do, I actually asked permission. I'm going to call him B, like the letter B. I got this fantastic printed email here. And I just want to touch through this email from B. Thank you, B, for the discussion we had. It is the reason I'm doing this stream. So I'm just going to read some of this. And again, this is not your typical video, right? This is not your typical like JHS show. These Monday monologues are all about setting together, reading your comments, discussing things, and taking time to understand something. So if that's not your cup of tea, then you're not going to enjoy this. But if it is your cup of tea, maybe you're commuting, maybe you're hiding one ear pod in your cubicle at work listening to this. But I'm just going to read. So here's B's email to me. This came to me on Tuesday. So it was the afternoon after last week. Again, go watch last week. So, Josh, I was disappointed by your opinion at the end of this Monday's Duke of Tone video where you were grousing, great word, about the Chinese pedal clones on Amazon. Now again, I'm gonna do like I'm gonna do the pop-up video of this email and just kind of walk you along how I perceive the comments and then read you my replies. So I talk about this for just a bit at the end of the video, but this triggers this entire email. He says, I felt like your argument was more emotional than rational and that it missed the mark on a few points. Pretty cool. Frankly, a lot of the pedal industry is built around the use of existing circuits. Practically every company of every size has their take on a tube screamer, a rat, a big muff, a fuzz face. He's not wrong. Plenty of legitimate pedal companies are turning out straightforward copies of existing pedals too. A lot of budget lines of big builders are direct copies of popular pedals that have been rehoused to conform with the company aesthetic. And some are even more shameless than that, completely stealing the decor of the original. This is the part that got me into the discussion, and I found it so fascinating to dialogue. Again, these Monday mornings are all about dialoguing with people and with ideas and doing something more than arguing on a forum. It's like, can we discuss things as intelligent humans? And this line was really interesting to me. You've praised the Behringer line on your channel, but they're literal clones of classic Boss pedals in plastic housing designed to look exactly like the pedals they emulate. I read that and I was like, okay. Because I have my reasoning for why I showed Behringer. But I'm listening, right? I'm listening. I think lastly, your argument is coming from a place of love for your fellow builders, and you believe these cheap clones are taking money out of their pockets. But realistically, no one that's considering a $30 to $50 knockoff is looking for the $200 to $300 original. Even at $120 to $150 for the mass-produced version, that's 3 to 5 times the price of the generic clone. That's way out of budget for someone in the market for a $30 pedal. I can also appreciate that you think people might get the wrong impression of a pedal due to playing an inferior copy. So I brought up, there are people cloning everything from Keeley compressor to, Brian Wampler's drive pedals to, I've seen my signature pedal, but they're not right. Like the circuits, they're missing stuff, or they're assuming stuff, and so you're not actually getting the pedal. You're not actually getting the pedal you think you're getting cheap. And then you have this weird impression of, I don't like the circuit, but you never really played it. And that's always been Paul C's thing with the Timmy. And that's why Paul has visibly been frustrated over the years with people cloning the Timmy, because they were doing it wrong. So much so that he would get on forums and tell people how to make it. If you're going to clone it, at least make it right. I've always found that interesting. Anyway, we keep going through, but I believe that all but the most deluded members of the gear page and Reddit recognize that a knockoff selling for a fraction of the price isn't going to be as similar as marketed. Basically is what he says. So then he says, I'm a big fan of your work. And then I love this line. But the inconsistencies in your logic for this argument gave off the wrong impression. I'm sure you are coming from a place of concern for the industry, your friends and peers, but it came out more like you were angry at some giant nameless company. So that wasn't at all what I was referring to or thinking. I'm not angry at anybody. I think it was an unfair complaint. Anyway, sorry for this is another great part of this email. And I'm using this email because B does such a good job communicating. And I love the last line. Sorry for the lengthy message, and no response is necessary. I just wanted to express my thoughts in a more deliberate and thoughtful manner than is possible on typical social media, as you're someone I admire and whose opinion I respect. So it wasn't about respecting me. It was just that he realizes you can't spout off in a forum or on the comments and really have a discussion. Like, you have to stop, learn, listen, talk it out. So I replied back and I said, here's my email back to him. Again, I warned you, this is not going to be your normal episode. And I am going to go through the two pieces of cloning and how there's two major things I want to teach you guys and walk through. And I'm going to get to that right after this email. These two aspects that I think everyone needs to understand. So basically, he says here, I was just like, I'm challenged by the things you said in a good way. And I never praised Behringer. I've actually thought about this, and I feel like I have never praised Behringer. Rather, I simply showed them and said that they were plastic, they were cheap, and they'd probably break. And that's what people can afford. They should buy them if that's all they can afford. I said similar things about Joyo, the Amazon line. These brands are affordable and people shouldn't dog on them. Most everything that was shown in this context was discontinued Boss pedals, right? So if the VB2 Behringer Vibrato clone, you can't buy a VB2. At least the Waza wasn't out then. And there's no big value there. There's like no big value difference there. When I did the original Behringer video, there weren't a lot of these Boss pedals like the Slow Gear, Super Fuzzes, etc. And I even remembered this story, in my head. I was with Yoshi one time. We were in London, and I joked with him on a panel about they should reissue the Slow Gear, and he looks at me and goes, "You do it." So a lot of times there's these multifaceted things in someone's mind, and there's more to the story, right? So when I see Behringer, especially when I did that video 2 years ago, I just go, well, you can't buy these pedals, and they're cheap. They will probably break, but people tour with them. I saw an incredibly famous guitarist just a few months ago at a festival. I was side stage, and there was a Behringer vibrato on his board. Anyway, keep moving. I said, I don't have an issue or problem with cheap clones categorically. There's no intellectual property issues here, and the circuits are pretty open and widely known. The problem lies in trade dress, the way it looks, the knob layouts, and the logos. These companies are copying the logos as well as the interior, with the intention of tricking people. For small builders like Analog Man, when people go to Alibaba or something like that and find a $30 version of their pedal, that's harmful to their business. We've run into issue as well where people buy cheap clones. I'm going to just tell you what I said. People will buy a Morning Glory clone, and then they'll be so tricked. We've actually gotten emails asking for us to repair our pedal. And we're like, that's not our pedal. We didn't make it. We have to open it up, show them it's a clone, and then they're disappointed, and then they're out their money. People can build whatever they want. I said, we build Rat clones, Tube Screamer clones, Big Muff clones, whatever. But we honor the companies we're copying from and we're learning from. You can see this in our videos where I did the history of the Proco Rat, the Bonsai Muffaletta. When I did the Muffaletta, I literally took it to Mike Matthews, to his office, flew to New York, handed it to him, and explained to him how it was a tribute to that. And, I mean, that's the process in my head here, right? So I'm replying to this guy, and I'm saying, hey, B, here's the whole story. I just said there's a big difference in copying and cloning, making it look identical to the original, tricking people, etc., etc. I'm really appreciative of your thoughtful response and the time you took to send an email instead of going nuclear on social media. So then I'm going to wrap up here. Here's his next reply, and I'm just going to breeze through it because I want to get to the points. But he comes right back out and he says, right here, it's great to hear from you. I wasn't expecting a response, but I'm glad my thoughts were well received and have come across the way I intended. No small feat when written on the internet. I love that line. I definitely understand Josh has a different perspective on these cheap clones and makes his living developing and selling pedals, but I'd like to offer a rebuttal. So we're still going here. This is me and B going back and forth, and I'm really enjoying this because I feel like it's helpful. It's helping me see a side of the story that I haven't really considered in 10 years. And so he keeps talking. Regarding the Behringer video and the Amazon and Joyo ones, while Josh may not believe that what he said is praise, he's definitely a tastemaker in the guitar pedal community. He's replying this back to Joshua, my assistant on the show. And he says, I'm not saying that he's shilling for them or implying that he has any motivation for playing the pedals. But when Josh does play pedals, compare them favorably to the ones they're based on, he is legitimizing the copies. When an authority on how a pedal should sound says it sounds good, that's praise. I have to give him that one. Okay, I've never considered that in that way. I think the Behringer line is an interesting one as well because it's definitely intended to copy the trade dress of Boss. Now this really got me. And as I've seen and heard an actual touring musicians with Behringer pedals on their boards, so it's fair to believe that Boss is missing out on some sales. This is where we differ, though. I mean, you could say that the Ibanez 9 series is copying the trade dress of a Boss pedal, and there feels like there is some common accepted value there of like what the trade dress of a Boss pedal is, what you should and shouldn't do. And I do know that there was legal action taken when Behringer released those pedals, and there was some type of settlement, and they did change the pedals. I've seen pictures of the original Behringer pedals, and they were much more violating the trade dress. And so again, there's all this stuff in my head. I go do the Behringer video. I feel like I'm just showing people a cheap line of pedals that you can go buy, whatever. They're making, where are you going to buy a super fuzz? Where are you going to buy a super fuzz? Like, nobody's making an authorized super fuzz anymore, so go buy the Behringer, go buy the VB2, right? But he just keeps going. And long story short, he says, I think there's a few groups of people. And he breaks down, there's 4 groups of people. He says there's broke people, people that just can't afford pedals, so they buy the cheap stuff. Curious people. These people don't want to make the full investment yet, so they go buy the other thing. They're curious. They spend $30. They spend $60. They're curious. The third person, he says, they're just cheap people. There's people who just refuse to pay more than $30-$40 for a pedal. And then he says there's people where they're good enough. And I really liked his breakdown. So that's the type people that B says he thinks buys these clones, and he says, he doesn't think it hurts the companies. Anyway, this conversation goes on and on. But so it really got me thinking about it all. And I want to read these in a bit. I messaged several really good pedal maker friends. These are builders that they're very famous builders, and I asked their opinion on this subject that B talked about, and I'm going to read those later. But now, let me glance over. There's a lot of you in here. Good morning, everyone. So here's the subject. This subject of cloning, kind of coming off this email from B, that's why we're doing this little discussion here. This subject is a real hot button subject, obviously. And so today I just want to discuss, based off of my 15 years of experience, things I've seen, and really my opinion's an opinion, right? But I think there are some facts, and this is not legal advice. I do want to give the disclaimer. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice, so just want to say that. And I just want to share a couple points that I feel like I can say that are factual, and I feel like they're generally missed in the discussions I see online about this subject of cloning. And again, you should watch last week, or you won't understand the full context and reasoning of why I'm doing this episode. So I think pedal cloning is a massive subject. I think there's no way to do it justice in 1 hour. So I think it's best to divide it up into some more digestible chunks. And the way I would divide it up is 3 chunks. So, there's a possibility here that maybe I do 3 episodes on this. Maybe not, because it's kind of an exhausting subject, but I did want to do this one today. Here are the 3 chunks that I would say you must understand, or at least be interested in, to have an educated discussion about cloning. Here they are. Number 1 is cloning or copying of circuits and circuit design. That is a very specific line of thought that must be considered in the understanding of, are clones okay? Cloning and copying of circuits and circuit design. That's 1. Number 2 is copying or replicating branding and the look of a product. So number 2 is copying the branding, the look, the logos. So those are 2 very different things. Circuits is 1, the circuit over here, the way it sounds, that design, and then there's the look. Those are 2 very different things. And then there's a third piece, which I think is one of the most interesting. This would be fun to do in a public forum, like a live Q&A with a group of people. Number 3 would be, and that would be ethics. What is allowed? Why is it allowed? And what does the common market or the common situation of today's pedal climate see as okay? Those are the 3 ways I would chop this up. Those are like the 3 nuggets that I would chop this up into. So let's jump into 2 terms that really matter for you to understand. If you know what this is, if you know what that is, just drop in the comments. It's my favorite. It's one of my favorite movies. Here are 2 terms that we should discuss to answer the question, are clones okay? Here are 2 terms to really look at. I love how many of you are on here. I am thankful that you're listening. And there's so many comments. So many comments. That's a good thing. I went like this because it's like, I want to read them all, but I can't. Not right now. All right. A patent. So What is a patent? We want to, everybody loves to get on the internet and just start lamb-blasting people for copying things or cloning things or whatever. But let's talk about what is a patent. We need to talk about trademark and patent. So let's look at patent first. A patent is a right granted to an inventor by the federal government that allows the inventor to exclude other parties from using, selling, or making an invention for a specific period of time. So you can patent something. If you invent a thing, you can patent it. These are given to, chemical inventions, designs, machines, unique circuitry. You can patent a lot of different things. There are patents on how certain devices work, certain combinations of electronics, there's all kinds of ways to do patents. And one example I'll show you is the first guitar pedal ever was issued patent 3213181. It was highly unique. This is a patent, and it is a guitar pedal that's patented. It was October 19th, 1965. So you can patent a circuit. People do it, but I'll get into that later, how it feels in 2022. A trademark, let's talk about trademark, is a visual symbol. So we have patent. This is the government issuing something to inventors to protect their invention and to encourage invention so that the inventor can profit from the invention alone for a period of time. Okay, that is patent. Then you have trademark. So trademark is a visual symbol. It indicates a source of a service or a product that is distinguishable from other similar services or goods. Examples include, numbers, combinations of colors, slogans, logos. So the Nike swoosh, let's use that one. If I go make some shoes and I put a Nike swoosh on it, that's a big no-no because I am obviously trying to sell my shoe using the fundamental work that Nike has put in over the years, the billions of dollars of advertising, the endorsements, the work they've done with designing. I'm using the swoosh, attaching it to my thing, and that's wrong. So that's a trademark infringement. You think of the Apple logo on the front of your laptop. Those are trademarks. Okay. So these apply to pedal cloning as this. A patent, number one, would be of a circuit or a PCB. So a patent of a circuit or a PCB. And number two, a trademark applies to pedals in this way. Trade dress. This is a term you all need to understand. Trade dress, like your trading cards. Trade dress. And names and logos. That's part of trade dress. You really can't patent a circuit. So back to this number one, patent of a circuit or a PCB. You really can't do it that well in 2022. I know I just showed you this. This is 1965 though. And fundamentally this had not been done. But here's the problem. We're in 2022 and everything's been done to some extent. So you really can't patent a circuit. It's real tricky. It's super tricky to do, and it's really hard to defend, and it's almost pointless. Most pedal builders will agree. Patenting a circuit is just like you'll go broke and it won't do any good. It's an uphill battle, and the patent office they're not going to honor a patent request on a guitar pedal in this day and age. You can patent the PCB art. So for instance, I'll show you this. This is an interesting find. Here's someone who has copied my double barrel. And if you look at the PCB, they physically replicated the entire PCB. And that is patentable. Like I could protect that and do something about it, but whatever. Like it would cost like $70 billion or something, right? It's a thing where they actually copied the PCB work as a work of art, and that is defendable. The biggest issue with a pedal builder trying to patent a circuit is that all pedal designs are using basic electronics functions And in their fundamental creation, they're not unique enough. So pedals, they're really not unique enough to get a patent anymore. It's just like Fender amps were basically radio circuits. The Big Muff uses a limiting clipping technique from a broadcast circuit. The Tube Screamer uses a basic IC amplifier design that's seen in 1,000 other devices. And I could go on and on and on. I mean, just the amount of pedal builders, including myself, who make delays using the Spin FV1 chipset. I mean, we're all using very similar tech. The amount of people making an op-amp distortion, like, how are you going to patent that? You can't patent it. It's impossible. Okay, that's the point. You might, I look at something like the Chase Bliss automaton with faders. That is a much more likely candidate for a patent than anything I've ever done, because it's a guitar pedal with moving faders, and there's something there that's very original to its function. It's sonically going to sound like other pedals because it's using distortion and overdrive and fuzzes, and we only do those in certain ways. But that pedal as a whole is very functionally unique, right? And these are very rare moments. I mean, that's one of the few I could think of. But yeah, the patent office sees pedal circuits as non-original for the most part. But they did see this and they were like, yeah, that's cool. That's never been done before, because that was the first guitar pedal. All right, patents are to encourage and protect inventors. Most pedals are not inventive. They're simply adjustments to pre-existing invention. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. I am saying most pedals are not inventive. They are simply adjustments to pre-existing invention. That does not mean they're not clever, that it wasn't hard to do. It does not mean that they sound different. It does not mean that they're more likable. It doesn't mean that they're awesome. It just means they're not truly innovative / inventive. No one's inventing the wheel. We are simply creating different tires that go on the wheel. I hope that makes sense to everyone. Now, the next thing here, if you're hanging around, you're my type person. Looking at some of these comments here before I go on. There's so many. Hilarious. Somebody called me a bum bum. I don't know what that means. I'm a bum bum. All right, number 6. Out of everything I've made, designed, maybe the color box and something like the unicorn was patent worthy, just because of the tech in the unicorn. It had never been done at the time. It's been done since, but a true photocell bulb being controlled by a microcontroller, that was very unique. And then the color box is really unique for a guitar pedal. Dual transformers, just the way that is. I probably had a shot at that, but I didn't go for it because I don't want to waste that money. It's very pointless. So every builder starts by cloning old famous circuits, and we basically build on the recipes of tone. Like, there are these recipes, there's the mid-range screamer circuit, there's the versatile distortion fuzz of the Rat, there's the IC boost of the micro amp type thing. But remember, these people are just using data sheet information. And so when you see a DoD 250 or Distortion Plus, that's kind of straight off the data sheet of how to use the op amp, the hard clipping, and then we do that and we adjust to what they did and we make something new, and it just kind of evolves. But we're just building with the basic recipes. It's like this. I cannot open a burger joint and patent my cheeseburger. Like, I just can't. Maybe if I did, I don't know what I would have to do there. If you're a chef or a cook, in the comments, tell me what I would have to do to patent a cheeseburger. Because I feel like this is a good analogy for drive pedals, right? So throw that in there if you're a food genius. Okay, here we go. Trade dress. This is the important subject. This is what we need to focus on. This is really the only thing that matters, in my honest opinion. Trade dress. Okay, so trade dress. I'm going to tell you a story. I've never told this story, but hey, I'm just throwing stuff out because I want to have open discussions. I want people to see things in a more realistic way than arguing on the forum. So here's a story. When I first started, this would have been 2000. I'm about 15 years into a pedal company. And when I first started, it was just me. I was building locally and never thought I would do this as a career. It just did not make any sense at the time. And I was like learning to build stuff. I was learning all kinds of stuff. I learned tube screamer schematics. I was learning how the fuzz faces worked. And then I was getting into all these other pedals that were just really interesting. And I remember being really fascinated in this certain moment with fuzz. And I had nowhere near me that had a fuzz factory. I would have had to drive like to Nashville to get a fuzz factory. And I wanted to play one. And I didn't want to, you couldn't quite as easily do the buy something and ship it to you. You definitely weren't going to get a return. But I wanted to play a fuzz factory. So I found a fuzz factory schematic and I built one. And it was super cool. And I still don't think it worked exactly right, but I understood the premise. It was a fuzz face circuit. It was a fuzz face circuit that basically, it was like upside down. It was the voltages. It was like the grounding and positive were flipped. It was crazy and chaotic. And I built one, loved it. A friend wanted one, so I built it. I sold one, and then that picture, I built like 4 of these, and I'd sold them. And here's the thing: I actually put Fuzz Factory on them. And when I look back at that, there's some very early stuff. I was really ignorant of, like, I didn't understand that was trade dress. That was a name. That was like a name that the builder had paid to protect, and that was a very valuable name. I now understand that because I have employees and their salaries depend on protecting those trademarks. I mean, they really do. There's the income from me selling pedals pays worker who feeds his kid. And so there's this food chain, so to speak, and those trademarks really matter. And I remember I got a message and it was like, hey, stop using the name, whatever, make the circuit, do whatever you want there, but do not use my names. And I was like, cool, thank you for teaching me that. And that taught me a real big lesson. It's all about trade dress, because at the end of the day, these circuits, there's no protection there, but you can trademark the names, and we trademark our names, and we trademark a lot of our icons and stuff like that as well. So the trade dress, here's the thing. It's the characteristics of the visual appearance of a product or its packaging or even the designs of a building. So think about a building design. That's a trade dress that signify the source of the product to consumers. Trade dress is an aspect of trademark law, which is a form of intellectual property. So I'm going to show you some things here that definitely violate trade dress. Now, we can't go into protecting some overdrive circuit or, a blues breaker variant circuit like my Morning Glory or King of Tone or something, but the trade dress really matters. And here are some examples. So if you look on the bottom, you have a King of Tone, and then these 3 pedals are pretty blatant trade dress issues. And the thing with it is, you're all going to have different opinions. You're entitled to your opinion. And it's your opinion. That's fine. You can have your decision on this. That's the thing. Nobody's here to argue. Nobody's here to like bash people over the head. I just want to show you. This is obviously, these top 3 pedals are obviously benefiting from the aesthetic, the cosmetic, the naming, King of Clone, King of Drive, Dual Drive, the triangle in the middle, the compass in the middle, the colors, the knob layout, the LED placement. They are obviously benefiting from Analog Man's work over the decades, building a fantastic pedal. They're benefiting from his work and using his trade dress in a way that is technically very much wrong. So that is trade dress violation. I mean, that is what it is. The fact is, those are trade dress violations. Now, here's another one. Keeley compressor on the left, the Demon Effects compressor on the right. This is obviously, like, we're not fooling anyone here. It's Yeah, it's supposed to look like a Keeley compressor because the Keeley compressor is famous. And if you make your pedal look like the famous pedal, you'll sell some because people will understand you're making a copy of it. And that is the use of trade dress. So that is that's just super interesting. Like, these are obvious trade dress violations. So I think that this is really interesting. I want to get back to the Behringer thing in just a second, but so I read B's email, and then I've kind of walked you through what really matters here. You can't really protect circuit design, and in most cases, why would you want to? What really matters is trade dress. So for me, a company with 40 or so employees, those things matter because are they taking a sale away? Are they benefiting on our hard work as a group of people who come to Kansas? We're in Kansas City. We wake up every morning. We have excellent customer service. We warranty our pedals. We're good to people. We have, we work really hard at bettering the industry. And then someone just takes the name to benefit from all of that work to make a quick sell. Is that an issue? I think in most every case, yes, it's a big issue. And so trade dress is what matters. The circuits, they are what they are. I don't know what to say there. I mean, you can go back as far as the electric guitar's invention in 1931 with the Beecham pickup, the Rickenbacker pickup. It's like everything came from something down the line. The amplifiers that Leo Fender made were simply modified radio and modified public announcement amplifiers. Everything's borrowing. Marshall borrowed from Fender. These circuits evolve. The Morning Glory or the King of Tone comes from a blues breaker. But what can be protected and what should be protected, in my opinion, is trade dress. So here's the emails, texts and emails from 3 really good friends. I'm not going to tell you who they are. We're just going to keep that secret because I don't expect anyone to get the hate that I will probably get from this video. So I don't ask my friends to do that. But they were excited to chime in as long as I kept them private. I don't mind taking a little hate. It doesn't bother me. So here's one. Okay, this is from famous builder number 1. My question to all these builders was, how do you feel about this trade dress stuff? Like, how do you feel about this? Right? That was my question to them. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about stuff like this? All right, so this is famous builder number 1. The practice of cloning a circuit in the pedal industry is certainly nothing new. Just take the classic Tube Screamer and the Boss SD1 circuit. 2 great pedals, basically the same as each other schematically, but both sound completely different. There's nothing wrong with this practice, and many great pedals have come from the evolution of a circuit via modification or tweaking of the circuit. This is not the same as when someone attempts to pass off a copy of someone else's pedal as a viable replacement. This is flagrant misrepresentation, in other words, counterfeiting. Taking someone else's design, both circuit-wise and aesthetically, and trying to sell it as a cheaper, more available alternative is a dubious and shady practice that is, simply put, stealing hard-earned money from original manufacturers. So that's that's famous builder 1. All right? I'm just reading these. I'm not saying I agree. I'm not saying I disagree. I'm just reading very well-known builders' takes on this question. Okay? Famous builder 2. I'm going to make this one 2. Famous builder 2 says, when a company copies the trade dress and appearance of another company's product, they're not just copying their look and form, they're expecting to capitalize on the goodwill that brand has earned and on the customer's assumption that their work delivers the same benefit. We might buy a Coca-Cola because we've experienced a lifetime of knowing how it tastes, because they've spent their lifetime consistently delivering that experience. I love that line. New Coke Detour 1985 expected. If Cheapacola, so Genericola, was allowed to copy the bottle form, color scheme, typography, and sell that to you, they're counting on us or you expecting it to taste like Coke because of Coke's work. It's fundamentally parasitic. I love they're not holding back on their thoughts. I have legitimate concerns regarding the Chinese government and business practices on trade dress. Stories abound of companies looking to expand into that market only to discover their work is already there. Long story short, I have no problem, for example, with a company like X contracting foreign labor to make a less expensive knockoff series of his work to be more affordable. But if a Chinese company calls itself X and made companies of X stuff, screw that. All right, and here's Famous Pedal Builder 3. I'm just reading these. I'm reading the comments. They are anonymous. They are from Famous Pedal Builders, and it's a great experience to just read them, let you hear them, and then fight it out in the comments. We don't fight on the Monday Monologues. Talk it out in the comments. Here's Famous Builder 3, the last of the famous builders. I think straight up trade dress cloning companies like Demon Effects are clearly in the wrong. If a brand has a dozen cosmetic clones and offer little else in that series of products, then you're not simply flattering me with your copy. In my own design work, I like to pay homage to or reveal my influences through design colors, fonts, or even circuit topology, but those are elements of a design and are not a direct attempt to stop the sales of another product by misleading musicians. That's well said. Other countries have a different view legally of trade dress infringement. It can be very hard to navigate a legal course of action when it's not particularly frowned upon by some governments. I'm pissed when I see a visual ripoff of your at Andy Timmons signature pedal, King of Tone, a Cali 76 compressor, or a Friedman distortion or a Wampler distortion. I just hope that these companies don't gain a significant sales channel. So, this is a saucy Monday morning, y'all. I like it. I'm going to say this. These things we should be able to discuss these in an intelligent way and not just deal with snarky comments. So if you're in my chat right now throwing off snarky comments, you're missing the point. And I'm going to call you out on that. Like, if you're in this forum of my channel, you're missing the whole attempt here. The attempt is, hey, let's take an hour. We're almost there. Take an hour. Let's talk about trademark. What does it mean? Can you do it? Let's talk about trade dress. Let's listen to some famous builders' opinions anonymously. Let's listen to B's email that was so thoughtful and sent to me in such a wonderful way. I love this email. I want to go back to it. You're missing the point. Don't be that person. Let's look at this stuff and try to be really honest with it. Try to be open with it. Okay? That's the goal here. So if you're one of these people in the comments, please go somewhere else. All right. So, Josh, I'm you asking me. So, Josh, what about the Behringer episode? Isn't that an obvious trade dress issue? I never saw it that way for various factors. It's interesting because, I had this personal experience with Boss. I was told, hey, go clone the slow gear, in a public forum. There was no problem with their thoughts of cloning their old pedals. Boss doesn't care if you clone their old pedals. There's a lot of experiences that compile in a person. I think the internet's biggest problem is everything is very microwave and instant. It's like TikTok, instant hit, viral video, one-liner on a Reddit post, one-liner on a gear page, walk away and watch it burn. The problem is nothing is decided or understood in a moment. That's not how we work. That's not how the human existence works. Things are decided and understood over a period of moments and over a lifetime of trying to understand. And many of you, I've read your comments, and I think that you there's some very intelligent people that have been watching the Monday stuff, and I'm learning from you. And what I love is that I get the impression that so many of you that are watching these Monday monologues, you really are trying to learn and understand things in a way that's not so microwave, right? And what this leads to is we change our opinions. I think there's this weird thing also in society. I don't mean to get all philosophical or something, but there is this interesting thing that I struggle with, which is in this day and age, if you change your mind, you're seen as weak. And I think that's the stupidest thing I've ever experienced. A man or woman who changes their mind, it's a sign of intelligence. And I think we're allowed to think about things and go, that's so interesting. Like, maybe I got that wrong. And with the Behringer episode, I don't know. I knew there was a legal settlement. I knew they adjusted it. I knew that Boss was at this point, due to the legal settlement or whatever that took place or the changes, they were okay. I knew that Behringer pedals were basically the discontinued pedals you couldn't find. And maybe that's an oversight by me. And I'm okay to say that. I'm totally okay to say that's an interesting one. And I'm really thankful to you, B, for sending me that email, because I want my life to be a constant observation of my decisions and maybe a discovery of how I was wrong in the past. And then that lets me change and be a better person. And this whole culture that we live in, it's just trash. This trash culture of if you change your mind, you're an idiot. No, if you change your mind, it's a sign of intelligence. And I just want to offer that up to a lot of you, just to go, hey, it's okay to say you were wrong. Like, that is a healthy sign of intelligence. So with Behringer, I'm not sure. I just got to think on it more, because I thought I felt fine with that. The Amazon pedals, same thing. They're in these little enclosures. They say Amazon. I made 100 Jeff Bezos jokes, and I don't know. They're like $30, but there's no trade dress there. The Behringer thing has this potential of a trade dress issue, but I think with me personally, it's a difficult one because of how all the things I knew about it that most people didn't know. And that leads you with your thoughts. But yeah, anyway, that's my rant on whatever that rant was. So what should we do with this? Let's close it off here. Oh my gosh, there's so many comments. You guys are amazing. Thank you for being here. It's crazy to have 2,000 people on a 1 hour talk about trade dress. Crazy. Where do we go? Here are some, just off the top of my head, I'm just going to riff here, and then I'm going to look through the comments for a second. I think where we go is we realize that this should never be viewed as some innocent tribute. That's just not the case. It's just not. Like, you're going to buy one of those 3 top pedals because it's a viable, cheap alternative to the bottom, and it lives its life off the back of Analog Mike's hard work. So I think that's a fact. You don't go buy the one on the right without knowing what the one on the left. You just don't, right? So, a good example of this is my 3 Series compressor is a Dynacomp Ross style compressor. Similar, but the Keeley one has its own flair. Keeley compressors are the best compressors in the world. But, I'm making a very similar compressor, but I don't do that, right? So I'm selling it on the back of my own company and what I've worked hard to do, not what Robert's worked hard to do. And I think that's one of the differences. So those are a couple takeaways. What are some more takeaways? And put your takeaways in the comments. Maybe I'll read some of them. Saxby says, "Sweet child, where do we go now?" If something's out of production, something's vintage, go for it. Those are fun. I mean, The majority of my line is, Legends of Fuzz. It's taking these hard to find circuits and replicating them so that people can have them in an affordable way and have them accurate. And I go to great lengths to do that. I think there's also some comment. I've seen comments on forums before, and people be you you just clone stuff. There's no. It's just so easy. Actually, the Legends of Fuzz series, cloning stuff accurately is freaking hard to do. And anyone who says that cloning things is easy and doesn't require R&D, they're very mistaken. Some of the hardest R&D I've ever done was things like Legends or similar projects like the Muffaletta or the Pack Rat or the Bonsai. Those are insanely difficult R&D projects. Anyway, that's a whole other rant. So these clones are not bad when they're out of production clones, vintage, carrying the branding of the company making it, not the branding of the thing being cloned, not piggybacking off the back of someone else's hard work. And they're bad when they actively exist on the back of another brand's intellectual property like trade dress. Yeah, and there's just some gray areas, like the Behringer things really got me thinking, and that's interesting, and I'm thankful for that. I also was going to say, we've all experienced, you go to the grocery store and you buy the bag cereal. You know that it's Honey Nut Cheerios, but it says like honeybee oats or something, and it's in a bag. I've always been interested in how that works with food, because you'll go buy like ketchup and it's clearly Heinz looking ketchup, but it's not. Generic medication, or like when you go to Walmart or Target and you buy their version of aspirin, but it's like so close looking. There's interesting things with trade dress. And again, I said last week, and I've said the week before that, guitar does not exist in a vacuum. And I think that gets into the ethic, and that gets into what's socially accepted. So let's look at some Q&As. I'll take a few minutes and let's look through the stuff here. Let's see. Greg Crane, Josh should wear a dress for this. That would have worked really well with trade dress. I missed that opportunity. I'm a failure. Man, there's so many. This is a tough one to even get into. Skeleton Pete says the Behringer Super Fuzz looks nothing like the OGs. Says it lifts boss lick for connection with buyer's perception of quality. Alternatively, it's a killer pedal. Recipes can't be patented, same as circuits, Greg Wilcox says. Generic cereal never tastes the same, though. That's what I believed as a kid. We were too poor to have like the real cereal. We couldn't afford it, so I always got the bag cereal. And I would be like eating my bag Lucky Charms, and I knew they weren't lucky. Those were unlucky charms. Thanks, Mom, for the unlucky charms. Okay, here's a good one. The Dilligan. How about when Line 6 puts a King of Tone clone in their Helix? Now, Boss has a clone sound in the DD, whatever the drive pedal is, the 200 series. That's interesting. It's not violating any trade dress, and it's just a sound. Man, I have so many stories, maybe for another episode. There's some fascinating stories when I did interviews with Line 6 about the story of the 4x4 delay modules and stuff. There were these lawsuits, and I have a bunch of info on how the trials went and how people won or lost, and it was fascinating. Can't get into it now, but I don't see any legitimate question. I see tons of comments, so I know you guys and gals are engaging in this, and that's really wonderful. And that's really my hope for this, is just that you would engage in the thought and like carry the thought on, because I don't, I'm not a magician here. I just want people to think about stuff. Christopher Hansford said Josh brings up food a lot. Yeah, I'm hungry. Grant Morsley, what's your opinion on build your own clones? I think build your own clones, clone kits are valuable. I think every builder, I started that way. I mean, it's a great education. They're not trying to sell you a pedal as if they're the company. You know, I love clone kits. I recommend them. I did some with Stu Mack. I think they're wonderful. I think every one of you should go build a pedal. Everyone watching this should just take a shot at it. Go buy a clone kit. Vibus Patil, he top chatted. With all the great technological advancements we've seen, why is it so hard to replicate the sound of the NKT germanium transistors or the old Lexicon reverbs? I would argue and say it's not hard to replicate the sound of those transistors. I think the circuit around the transistor is what matters most. And I would also say their Lexicon reverbs, I mean, those have been done pretty well. I feel like they have. Let's see here. There's so many. You guys are amazing. So how does Seriatone get away with it? Christopher Hansford, talking about a Klon replica. Klon is a really complex topic that we don't have time for. He quit making the Klon. He made the KTR. The Klon has entered what feels like this public domain. Bill is back and forth with making them, not making one of. I don't know. I gotta be honest. The Klon is like a whole other crazy, just a crazy situation to talk through. But it might be worth it to talk through that someday. Kyle Gisbert says, I think this boils down to a lack of patience in society. We want what we want now. It's one thing to get a pedal to try it out if you like it enough. Save up, get the pedal if you want to support them. It's a great comment. Willie Deal, I'm bad with names. I agree that the idea that every pedal band should have their own consistent look. If Brand X issues a clone or clone-ish circuit, the enclosure should look like Brand X, not the original. Man, I'm overwhelmed with the amount of comments. This is really great. I will look through these later. I'll try to spend some time today and tomorrow. And thanks to lots of you that are watching this. Kind of amazing. Yeah, this was good. So, are clones bad? I threw out my stuff. I showed you what some famous builders that you all admire said. I read a wonderful email from a viewer that actually sent me a nice, calm letter of discussion. That was so nice. And I think trade dress is the main issue. I have nothing longer to say. We've been here for an hour. I appreciate your time. In the comments, let me know other discussions you would like me to talk about. I do listen to you. This entire discussion is from the email of a viewer, and I have chosen one of the other off of comments. So please, in the comments, tell me what you would like to see me talk about. I guess just put in there in an educated, polite way, how far is too far cloning in your opinion? So that's your 3 assignments. That's your homework assignment. Somebody just joked and said you should get a certificate from this. That would be funny. But yeah, let me know what you'd like me to talk about next. Let me know in the comments, considering cloning in your opinion in an educated, calm, and polite way, how far is too far? And yeah, that's it. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. I'm out of here.